Hey guys, Matt again. Thank you for tuning in to That You May Prosper Part 2. We're so glad you took the time out of your schedule to view our content. And today we're going to be dealing with bitterness. All through this series we will deal with bitterness, but today we're going to be dealing with it in perhaps a little bit different way. Just some thoughts before we really get into this series. Bitterness comes in many different flavors. There's bitterness from relationship betrayal. There's bitterness from friendship betrayal. Bitterness over illness or the loss of a loved one. There is bitterness that comes from being a victim that leaves you damaged, or bitterness over injustice or wrongs that you have suffered. The list goes on, and it's almost without limit, because inside each of these general categories of bitterness that we label, there's a cocktail that's made for a specific person and specific situations. And you know what? The reason people become bitter in their situations, the reason that circumstances causes people to become bitter, is because trauma and tragedy, adverse situations, leave an emotional vacuum that seeks to be filled. And I will make this concession: the easiest and the fastest way to fill that hole is through bitterness. But it's also the most unstable, the most dangerous, and the most temporary way to feel that emotional hole that adverse situations and circumstance leaves in you. And I know that sometimes it's the temptation to just grab hold because it's easily accessible. It's the equivalent of a person who is dying of thirst happening upon poison. He can drink it. You may drink it and it quench your thirst, but it's still going to destroy your body. And today we're going to cover bitterness from an unusual angle. And it is the bitterness that can be brought about not from doing something wrong, but from doing what is right. Luke chapter 1 and verse 28 begins to tell us the story of when the angel visits Mary. And he comes to her and he says, "Greetings, O favored one, the Lord is with you." The Bible said she was greatly troubled at his saying, trying to discern what sort of greeting this might be. And the angel said unto her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God." Now, when we think of Mary, we think of the most blessed of all women. The woman who would bring into the world the Son of God, the flesh of God himself. This woman was favored by God, but it cost Mary something to be favored. Here Mary is. She's planning her wedding day, the most important day in any young woman's life. And all of a sudden an angel appears to her and tells her, "You are favored by God." "Oh, really? How's that?" "You are pregnant." Picture this from Mary's perspective. Over the next year, the favor of God becomes her greatest challenge. This woman who becomes all of a sudden the talk of the town, this unwed girl who's pregnant and nobody believes her story. She claims to be a virgin, but she's pregnant. It's beyond far-fetched. It is impossible. Her fiance decides to call it quits. "I mean, Mary, you're pregnant and it ain't my baby." And only through divine intervention does Joseph stay with Mary. The trial of God's favor does not stop there, however. She's got to be pregnant at the worst possible time, because right around delivery time, she and Joseph have to make that trek to Bethlehem to pay taxes. Here she is bumping up and down on the back of a donkey through the desert, and when they get to Bethlehem, she finds that there's not even a room in the city where she can go in and rest. She's led to a dirty barn, and there with the animals looking on, Mary goes into labor. This woman who is not a sinner, she's not a sinner. She brings forth her precious child, and she doesn't even have a clean place to lay him or clothes to put on him. She wraps him up in the rags that they used to clean up the cows when they got done milking him. And then they lay him in a feeding trough. That's his bed, a manger, a feeding trough. This woman is not a sinner. This woman who was declared to be favored by angelic proclamation is going through things that are so unfair. If this isn't enough, she has to go on the run for the next years of her life because a mad king wants her baby dead. She's favored by God. She was honored by God. But here's a truth, and it's hard to hear sometimes, but it really is the truth when it comes to people who are favored by God. It sounds good when somebody looks at a person and says they're favored of God, but nobody really knows what that path to favor looked like. They don't know what that person experienced to get to that point where they could say, hey, they're favored of God. The favor of God comes by preaching a word that God gives you for 100 years when nobody believes it. At least that's how Noah obtained favor. It comes by standing up against overwhelming odds when it looked like defeat was the only way. At least that's how Gideon obtained favor. The favor of God comes by saying, lay not this sin to their charge, even as the stones are piling up around your feet. At least that's how Stephen obtained the favor of God. The favor of God, it is given to those who God sees has the endurance to just keep on keeping on. To those who, when the way is dark and long, they don't throw in the towel. They don't fall on their face. They fall on their knees. When persecution and accusation comes, these people who are favored, they don't look around on Facebook to see what the latest tale being told on them is. They pray for a right spirit and they pray for wisdom. We equate trouble with failure. We equate trial with punishment. But trouble doesn't mean you're abandoned. Trials don't mean God doesn't care. Sometimes they mean you're favored and you're trusted. How many times did Mary look at that swollen pregnant belly and think, I did nothing wrong? How many times did she have to fight bitterness for what she was going through? I wonder how many times she looked at her belly with tears dripping off of her cheeks. That belly that represented promise and favor, and just pray for enough grace to put a smile on her face and get through one more day. Someone is watching this, and you are under attack, not because you did something wrong, but because you did something right. And this is the most tempting thing to get bitter over. It's easier to take punishment for doing wrong than it is to take abuse for doing right. But you keep doing what you know is right because God keeps good records. I give to you the words of Job 23:10. He knows the way that I take, and when he has tried me, I shall come forth like gold. Bitterness through life and trouble, perhaps even through your friends and your family, they have sought to steal your worship, your song, your smile. But believe me, this storm will run out of rain and the sun will shine on you again. I give you the promise of Micah 7:8. Rejoice not against me, my enemy, for when I fall, I shall arise. And when I sit in darkness, the Lord shall be a light unto me. It doesn't say if I fall or if I sit in darkness. It says when. There will be days that you fall. There will be days where you sit in dark places. But listen to me. Bitterness is never more dangerous than when there is a legitimate reason for it. But you have to purpose in your mind. I have to purpose in my mind. I'm not going to be bitter. I'm going to be better. Thank you for tuning in. We so much appreciate it. Share this video. Comment down below. Send us an email. We'll look forward to hearing from you. God bless.